Welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. For the past 18 months, Democrats in the Congress and their PR consultants in the press have told you that Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election, mostly because his campaign somehow colluded with the government of Vladimir Putin. To prove that, they have brought the usual business of government here in Washington basically to a standstill and launched the most divisive special counsel investigation in the history of the country. It has now gone on for more than a year. And yet, remarkably, to this very day, we still have no proof of collusion. Just this weekend, Democrat Mark Warner of the Senate Intel Committee, who is someone everybody in Washington pretends is impressive, was offered a chance on television to provide actual evidence of Russian collusion. He declined. Of course he did. They always do. You've seen this before, but tonight we have something different for you. We have a Democrat who says he has the smoking gun. 3 months ago, we made this offer to Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, who is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Watch. If you have any evidence at all of collusion, any, and I don't care how small it is, I will give the floor to you, and I mean that, because I want to wrap this up. I'm sure you do too. So he offered the congressman a full half hour live on this show if he could give us evidence, real evidence, of Russian collusion by Trump's campaign. And to his credit tonight, he is taking us up on that offer. There is nothing staged about this conversation, the one you're about to see. If the congressman has proof that Trump people colluded with a hostile foreign power, we will be the first to call for indictments. But if he doesn't have that proof, if after all this time there is still no real evidence of collusion, then we will know for certain that this whole thing is a lie that has badly damaged our country. We're going to find out in just a minute. Meanwhile, the Russia investigation continues to expose deep and terrifying corruption in Washington, and not in the ways the people who launched it expected. On Friday, the New York Times and the Washington Post reported that the Obama administration employed a spy who posed as an advisor to the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. He was a longtime CIA asset who fed information back to federal intelligence agencies. The Obama people lied about doing this, but they did it. As far as we know, nothing like that has ever happened in American history. Richard Nixon was accused of less than that, and he left office. So you'd think the self-described guardians of democracy in the media would be horrified by the suggestion of partisan spying, no matter what they think of Trump personally. But they're not horrified. Instead, they're aggressively defending it like the craven lackeys they are. The Washington Post over the weekend actually ran an op-ed with this headline. We're not making this up. Quote, "The FBI didn't use an informant to go after Trump. They used one to protect him." Amazingly, the New York Times agreed with that. Here was its story in the subject. Quote, "FBI used informant to investigate Russia ties to campaign, not to spy." In other words, Donald Trump should be grateful that Obama's FBI spied on him. It was for his own good. The people who wrote this crap should be ashamed. It's not journalism. It's partisan cheerleading. It's also embarrassingly credulous. Just transcribe whatever spin you got from your FBI source and call it a news story. How would these idiot reporters feel if the Trump administration read their emails or tapped their cell phones or sent a spy to spy on them and then claimed it was all for their own good? Well, obviously they'd be outraged, and so would we, because we're not hacks. Obama's CIA director, John Brennan, by contrast, is a hack. He's also a liar who's done more to embarrass and discredit the so-called intelligence community than any other single person. Brennan has been on Twitter attacking Trump and anyone else who wants to know more about the Obama administration's spying efforts in the last campaign, as if Americans don't have a right to know when their government is spying on them and why. Our ruling class is completely out of control. That's the real lesson of this Russian nonsense. And for the latest details, we're joined by Byron New York of the Washington Examiner and George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. Professor, first to you. Does the public, do Americans have a right to know if they were spied on and why?
I think that they do. I mean, these are very serious allegations, and they are unprecedented. You know, we don't know what the truth is. Maybe there was a valid reason for the investigation. Maybe they used valid means. But we should want to know. I mean, what I think is being a case of willful blindness here is that we have confirmation that Trump apparently was correct when he said over a year ago that he had people in his campaign that were under surveillance. It turns out that it was much broader than we thought, even though people like Clapper and others in the Obama administration denied it. It does appear to be a surveillance program. It does appear to be an investigation. And now you have an individual who reportedly offered to be an advisor in a campaign when he was an asset for the FBI or the CIA or both. I can't imagine what justice official would sign off on that. Now you can try to split this as you may, whether this is an investigation or surveillance. But from Trump's standpoint, there's a legitimate issue. You can tell a victim that this isn't a mugging; it's just a forced divestiture. But it sure feels like a mugging unless you can prove to the contrary.
If Bush had done this to Obama, I would want to know why. And I think it's fair to want to know. So what do we know, Byron? You've been reporting on this. When did this start?
Well, the emergence of this informant has kind of thrown into doubt our previous timetable of this. Remember, we've always been told that the FBI investigation formally started on July 31st. They wrote up something called the electronic communication that started this investigation. But now we hear that the informant was actually reaching out and talking to Trump campaign people well before that, at least weeks before that, maybe longer before that. And I think what you're seeing on Capitol Hill is some investigators, Republican investigators, are looking even further back than that.
So what would that mean? That he was doing it unilaterally because he was interested, or that he was doing it at the direction of one of the Obama agencies?
Well, that he was doing it at the direction of an agency before they had a pretense, a pretext to actually do this. So that would be a big issue inside the FBI. Also, we're seeing some investigators looking even further back to March. On March 21st, Trump goes to the Washington Post, meets with their editorial board. Remember, he was under a lot of criticism for not having a group of foreign policy advisors, in part because the entire Republican foreign policy establishment had shunned him. And they asked him, well, who are your advisors? He pulls a piece of paper out of his pocket and says, well, here they are. And he reads off a list. And on the list are Carter Page and George Papadopoulos. And we know now that James Comey and Andrew McCabe personally briefed the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, about them. Back then, that's in March, and then shortly thereafter, they were discussed at what's called the National Security Council Principals Committee, which is Secretaries of State, Treasury, Defense, CIA. All these people are talking about Carter Page then.
Totally shocking. Professor, quickly, since you've got more historical perspective on this than most people, is this without precedent? If true, has anything like this ever happened that we know of?
I know of no precedent to support this. Now, they have a case to make. The point, though, is for those people that are objecting, what are you objecting to? I mean, this is a serious matter. No matter how you feel about Trump, we need to find out the truth about this. If there was an investigation of an opposing political party, if there was an asset who tried to become an advisor in the campaign, those are serious matters for all of us. And I think that Trump is right. He went about it, I think, in the wrong way. But he has a legitimate objection here that we should know the true facts.
Well, I agree, and I don't think it's about Trump at all. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it. Glenn Greenwald is co-founder and editor at The Intercept, and he joins us tonight. You're not a Trump supporter. I don't think this is about Trump. I think it's about oversight of our intel and law enforcement agencies. What do you think of the coverage, which you've been following closely, of this alleged mole in the campaign?
It's incredibly bizarre, Tucker, because for the last 2 weeks, all we heard from the FBI, and of course the media reported it uncritically, was that it was extremely dangerous to try and expose or determine the identity of this informant, because to do so would be to jeopardize his life, the life of other people, national security, all the things they always say when they want to hide from the public what it is that they do. And now that the New York Times and the Washington Post published huge amounts of details about this informant, making it incredibly easy to know that it was Stephen Halper, because the Daily Caller 2 days earlier had reported all the same details and named him. We all now know who the informant is, and we know that that was just a fairy tale, that he's not some covert undercover agent, but somebody who's a well-known CIA operative whose name has been repeatedly published in newspapers as a CIA operative and as a Republican operative for decades. And so the whole claim that the media was circulating on behalf of the FBI that this was some sensitive covert asset turned out to be a lie, and the New York Times and Washington Post knew that, which is why they did everything but name him by publishing all of the details to let us know who it is.
But it wasn't just the media. I mean, you saw Mark Warner of Virginia, who's on the Senate Intel Committee, who's seen as a pretty sober person, basically threaten his colleagues with criminal prosecution if they in any way divulge the identity. What would be the justification for that?
This is what the intelligence community does, Tucker, and I've been trying to essentially make this point for 18 months now, as we've been told we're required patriotically to accept whatever it is that they say. I spent 3 years reporting on the NSA. They constantly said that it would be a crime if we divulged this information, that it would endanger people. As we reported on it, nobody was ever hurt. They were trying to cover themselves and their own wrongdoing and not the national security of the country. And that's the same here. You have people like Mark Warner and inside of the FBI and Justice Department who don't want us to know the name of the informant, not because they're worried about national security, but because they're worried about themselves. And that's why they're using the language they always use. You're going to be engaged in espionage. You're going to be jeopardizing lives. This is what they always say. And the reason why I think the media deserves criticism is because the media knows better than anybody that when they say that, they're in the vast majority of cases lying and trying to cover for themselves. And that's why it's so important that we keep digging.
I remember your NSA reporting well, and I apologize to you for not taking it more seriously at the time. You were right. And anyway, I'm grateful that you're doing it, and thank you for being one of the last remaining civil libertarians. Glenn Greenwald, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tucker.
Congressman Eric Swalwell says he can show real evidence that the president colluded with the Russian government. But first, we'd like to hear his thoughts on the FBI spying operation against the Trump campaign. The congressman joins us. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on.
Of course, Tucker. Thanks for having me back.
So if you found out that the Trump, you're up for re-election, of course, all members are. If you found out the Trump FBI had begun spying on you and was reading your emails and listening to the phone calls of your staff, and in fact had an advisor of yours calling back to FBI HQ and reporting what's going on in your campaign, and they said it's just for your protection, would you feel okay about that?
If they didn't have probable cause, I'd be pissed.
What would constitute probable cause?
Well, the evidence that you put forward to a judge and the judge has to sign off on it. And that's happened mostly through this investigation. So there's
but we know that in this case,
involved.
no judge, I mean, now you just heard fresh reporting that apparently this person, this advisor, fake advisor of the Trump campaign, was doing this long before July and maybe as early as March. I don't think there's any indication a judge signed off on that. Does that bother you?
Well, I've seen the evidence. I don't accept the premise of your question. There is a multiplicity of different individuals who saw concerning things, judges who signed off on FISA applications.
Did a judge sign off on this? I mean, I'm quoting the New York Times and the Washington Post here, and they're saying that a longtime CIA asset was spying on the Trump campaign on behalf of the Obama administration. Did a judge sign off on that?
I can't go into classified information. I can tell you, I haven't reviewed this.
It's not classified whether a judge signed off on it. That's
I
a
haven't seen
question. As an
anything
American, I have a right.
Yeah.
You brought it up. You
do.
said that a judge signed off on it, and I'm saying, is that true? Do you know that?
I haven't seen anything improper. I've seen a lot of evidence that was concerning, but what I do see that's improper is a president who is a subject of an investigation using his DOJ to look into the evidence locker. And that's wrong.
Let's make it really specific. I said we know from reporting from the New York Times.
Wait, so now you're trusting the New York Times?
No,
because you don't trust them most of the time. You don't trust them most of the time.
Look, I'm just saying, if I'm wrong, tell me. You're on the Intel Committee. They're reporting that a guy who was claiming to advise the Trump campaign was reporting back to the Obama agencies. You just said a judge signed off on that, or suggested one had.
No, on a lot of the evidence in this case, judges have signed off.
No, but on that spying operation, did a judge?
I can't say on what is being alleged. I'm just telling you all the evidence I've seen.
Do you believe a judge signed off on that?
I believe a judge has signed off on a lot of good evidence that exists in the case.
But on that specific, does that not bother you? Would you want a judge to sign off on it? If he were spying on your campaign, Trump is spying on your campaign, would you? And we don't really know whether a judge signed off on it. Would that be good enough for you?
It's a great question, Tucker.
Considering it's a great question.
All the evidence I've seen in this investigation of all the contacts that Trump's had with the Russians, I would want judges to sign off on anything that would make sure that a foreign adversary wasn't meddling in our election.
Do you care if a judge signs off on spying operations that are waged against political campaigns? Well, is that of interest to you?
I think you have to be a little more careful and understand the political consequences. But so far, I haven't seen...
What about the moral and legal consequences? Should a judge have to sign off on a spy within a presidential campaign, especially when the agency is controlled by the opposing party? Should a judge have to sign off on that?
We should trust judges to be independent, investigators to be independent. I haven't seen any evidence of impropriety yet. But I've seen a lot of obstruction.
You don't know if a judge signed off on it, and you don't care. That's the take. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I know, but I'm not going to give you classified information. I'm going to tell you.
Why would that be classified, whether a judge signed off on it? Why can't I know that?
Because I'm not going to comment on New York Times reporting of classified information. What I'm telling you is the evidence I've seen.
Do you believe it happened?
Of the evidence I've seen, Tucker, there were very good reasons to be concerned about the contacts that the Trump campaign had. And I can go into that evidence.
Look, we're going to spend the whole next segment going into the evidence, and I can't wait to hear it. And if you can convince me, I'll call for indictments, and I mean that with total sincerity.
But aren't you concerned about the leaking that's taking place on this story?
I don't know. Were you concerned that the dossier was leaked? Did that bother you?
Yeah, well, I thought the dossier was the beginning of this investigation, and now you're moving it to it was
no, but look, I'm just saying, you're very upset.
And shifting.
Here, it's really simple. I'm an American.
Yeah.
If it turned out the Trump FBI was spying on your campaign, even though I don't agree with you on the issues, I would say you better have a pretty good freaking reason
damn
to
good
be spying.
reason.
Exactly. And you better have legal pretext, and you better have a judge's order. But they didn't have a judge's order. You know that. But it doesn't bother you. And I'm asking why.
No. I'm telling you that I have seen a lot of evidence, a lot of contacts that the Trump team had with Russians, that judges, I would be asking for them to...
But you've seen no evidence that this mole was approved by a judge.
You're trying to get me to acknowledge something that we have not acknowledged yet, and I'm not going to do that.
You're hiding behind...
No. There's plenty of evidence. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to have the access I have to be concerned.
Well, let me just say, I'm obviously not going to move you into the factual realm.
Or into the break a law realm.
As a matter... Look, if it turns out that they spy on your campaign, as God watches, I will call them out for that because I think it's immoral.
If they didn't have probable cause,
probable cause means nothing. They need a judge's order, as you just said.
The rule of law is based on probable cause.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. In just a minute, the congressman will present his evidence that the collusion investigation is real and that the Trump campaign worked with the Putin government in order to beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. Stay where you are.
Tucker Carlson.
Welcome back. We're still joined by Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, a member of the House Intel Committee. If you've been watching cable news for the past year, no doubt you have seen the congressman talking a lot about Russia. Here's part.
Russia attacked our democracy this past election.
And then they showed up to his Trump Tower, offered the evidence to his family. They received it. They didn't turn it down. Donald Trump for years had been working with the Russians. He brought people on his campaign who had ties to the Russians.
We have seen a candidate and a president who has spoken in very flattering ways about Vladimir Putin.
All of the arrows continue to point to a personal, political, and financial relationship that Donald Trump had with the Russians.
The congressman has come on tonight. We've given him a lot of time to present to us evidence, actual evidence of collusion. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming back.
Yeah, of course, Tucker.
So Trump said in the campaign, I want to bring us closer to Russia. A lot of people agree. I certainly agreed with that. A lot of people on his campaign.
Why? Why did you agree with that?
Because as a geopolitical matter, I think the enemy is China, and I think we have.
Can we have more than one enemy?
Sure, absolutely, but I just think I don't agree with their posture, aggressive. I don't agree with the Trump administration's posture toward Russia right now. Actually, it's too bellicose. Whatever, but that's a legitimate point. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't make you a traitor. But is there actual evidence? I've followed this pretty carefully. Where's the actual evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Putin?
So, 2014, 15, 16, Russians hack into our DNC. They weaponize social media. 2015, they make what I think is the first approach that we know. So Felix Sater, Russian-American, former business partner with Donald Trump, approaches Donald Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, and says, let's get Donald Trump to build a Trump Tower in Moscow.
Right.
We can engineer this, get Trump and Putin together, and make our boy president. So that's the first known approach. So the hacking's going on, and you start to see these different approaches. And there's two different types of approaches. There's the approaches to get Trump and Putin together, which is unusual because he's a candidate. And then there's the approaches to preview the hacked emails that the Russians have against Hillary Clinton. So you see that offer made to George Papadopoulos while he's over in London by a Russian. He lied about that. He pled guilty to lying, admitted that it occurred. You see the approach with the June 9th meeting, the Agalarov family, Russian developers close to Putin, trying to get Trump and Putin together. They offer, dirt on Hillary Clinton. That June 9th meeting, they move heaven and earth, Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort and Kushner, to take the meeting, right? Donald Trump, days before the meeting occurred, once his son knows the meeting's happening, tells the world new information's coming out about Hillary Clinton. Days after the meeting, Julian Assange tells the world that Hillary Clinton emails are coming out. Then you start to see the hacked emails released. What does candidate Trump do? He doesn't disavow them. No one in the family says we had taken these meetings. Instead, he invites the Russians on a public stage to hack more.
So I think you're talking about his
press conference.
He made an invitation. He did. So I think we have that. This is July 27th, 2016, at the Doral National, which he owns in Doral, Florida. Here's the clip you're talking about.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Let's see if that happens.
So,
Yeah.
two questions.
He was rewarded.
One, do we have the 30,000 emails? Did Russia ever come up with those?
We're still.
Oh, no, they didn't actually. But
you know that
but
for a fact?
Well, we haven't seen them.
Yeah. Well, let's let the Mueller investigation continue.
Okay, maybe Mueller's in contact with the Russians, but Trump didn't come up with those from the Russians, so that didn't happen. But let me ask you this: if Trump was going to,
there's still an attempt there, right?
Okay, but
you can attempt to do something and fail, and it can still be a crime.
But would you do? I mean, I hate to inject common sense into this.
Would you do it in broad daylight?
To make secret contact with Russia, your handlers back in Moscow, wouldn't you dial them up in the shortwave in the basement? Would you really send a coded message in the middle of a joke at a press conference?
I'm not saying he's the smartest guy in the world, Tucker. Never accused him of that.
That's the smoking gun right there.
That's part of the evidence. An invitation made by the candidate
at a press
telling him
conference.
It's okay.
Okay, but
he's not
that
the
was
smartest
on
guy in the world.
television. Okay, so he's both a secret agent for Putin, but he's so dumb that he spills his secrets at a press conference on TV.
The latter.
Okay.
So he makes an invitation. He doesn't disavow what they're doing.
But
so what
Russians
do? They start to do more.
Give him the 30,000 emails.
They start to do more. They start to hack more. And so
you heard the people laughing at the end of what he said, right?
He's broadcasting. He's committing, the offer in broad daylight.
To Russia, why wouldn't he just act through all the many Russian agents?
So let me continue. So at the same time,
but those are fair questions, right? It's a little confusing.
Completely fair questions.
So what's the answer?
But there's no. Hey,
why would he do it in public?
Why did he admit to Lester Holt obstruction of justice in public? There's no who could be so stupid they commit the crime in public exception. He did it.
Has any secret agent ever broadcast a message at a press conference to his handlers ever?
Has any businessman ever been elected president? Sometimes you're the first person to do it. So Tucker, again, he made the invitation.
Okay.
Makes the invitation in public, right? Then you start to see during the summer of 2016, we have an email that is titled Kremlin Connection. An offer made to Paul Erickson of the campaign to connect Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin again.
Okay.
Kremlin connection, right? So again, more and more
Did they connect?
offers.
Do we have evidence that he talked to Putin?
I don't believe that they connected. But
so
again,
where's the smoke? Where's the evidence? I mean, I know all this stuff. But where's the evidence?
Well, first, Tucker, don't confuse evidence with a conclusion. Evidence gives the FBI and the Department of Justice.
Smoking gun? Look, I've been going through this for a year. Look, I watch Rachel Maddow. I get it. I know there are a lot of Russians and Russian people in emails, but where's the actual proof that something happened after more than a year of this?
Well, I'm not the prosecutor. I don't have subpoena power. Bob Mueller does. All I'm saying is
you do have a high-level security clearance, and you're on the Intel Committee, so presumably you'd have more than a clip of him at a
I'm only giving you the evidence that I've seen in an unclassified manner. So I'm telling you that all of that warrants looking at whether we could prove beyond a reasonable doubt conspiracy to defraud the United States.
But
those are the
aren't
crimes.
we working on that? I mean, we've been working on that for a long time.
Well, not with the obstruction that we continue to see. The continued undermining, the trying to...
So that's it? That's all you got?
No.
Okay, so what's the part I haven't heard? Tell me. I'm waiting. Because I want to... Look, if he's...
It's right in front of your nose, Tucker.
Tell me what it is.
It's right in front of your nose.
Is it another press conference he gave with more secret messages, or tell me?
Again, Tucker, when we look back on this in 25 years, we're going to be amazed at how much of it was right in front of us. So, they're hacking.
We're all speaking Chinese at that point.
There's
and we're like, people thought Russia was the threat. Isn't that weird?
There's approaches. They never turn down any of the approaches. The candidate makes an invitation in broad daylight, as you said. They continue to try and arrange meetings through the summer. And then you start to have what I call, if there's a quid pro quo, there has to be a quo, right? If there's a transaction that's taking place, you start to, of course, there's the candidate's positive, favorable statements about Putin, even if those are just, as you said, so we have a better relationship with Russia. How do you explain the national security advisor, the incoming national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who had been over to Russia just a year before, telling the Russians, don't worry about the Barack Obama imposed sanctions? How do you explain that? That's
I would explain it this way.
How do you explain bringing the Russians into the Oval Office, giving them national security secrets?
Here's what I would hope, that we would stop with the sanctions on Russia. I think they're counterproductive. But the Trump administration has done just the opposite. So we sent Javelin missiles to the Ukrainian rebels. We've opened up domestic oil production here, which hurts them, and gas production. We have killed over 200 Russians in Syria. We have bombed the government of Bashar al-Assad, which is their closest ally outside their borders. In what sense has he been pro-Russia as president? And I say this with sadness, because I don't think he should be doing any of that.
Yeah, well, all the favorable things that he says, bringing Russians into the Oval Office, kicking out Americans, letting Russian press...
Can we just be reality-based really quick?
And failure to impose the congressionally passed sanctions. You know how hard we had to work, the public sentiment that was...
What about killing the 200 Russians? He's been
Did he kill them?
He sent the U.S. military.
I think you're giving him too much credit.
Well, I don't know. Look, I'm not flacking for Trump. I don't think he should have done it. I criticized him on the show.
You're absolutely right.
I'm just telling you, he's killed 200 Russians. Obama did not do that. He sent missiles to Ukrainian rebels. Obama did not do that. He is competing in energy with them in a way Obama never tried. Why is he more pro-Russian than Obama was?
Don't confuse what he has to do because the public sentiment is so high and watching him. Again, you give him too much credit. You're giving him too much credit.
I'm not giving him credit. I'm criticizing him. I don't think he should be doing any of it. I'm just saying this whole thing is insane. That's what I'm saying.
So, and then you have all the consciousness of guilt evidence, right? All of the lies that have been told, whether it was about the June 9th meeting, the Russian adoption excuse, and then moving it to what it was really about. But so that's consciousness of guilt. A lot of times, the way someone acts after an investigation is launched can tell you what they were doing.
I guess I'm not. You know what? I'm not
so again,
clairvoyant. Maybe that's not why I'm not in
don't confuse
Congress.
evidence with a conclusion. There's more than enough evidence to continue and find out how close are these ties. Did the willingness and eagerness add up?
I was hoping for something. We're going to take a break right now. We'll continue our conversation with Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. We're continuing our extended conversation with Congressman Eric Swalwell, Democrat of California. So you've talked a lot about Russia, but you've also become known for your position on guns, and you're one of the very few Democrats, I think, who's been honest about that. You say that the U.S. government ought to ban a certain species of rifle. You wrote a piece about this. This is not a secret view you have. You wrote it in USA Today, and you say this: we should ban possession of military-style semi-automatic assault weapons. We should buy back such weapons from all who choose to abide by the law. And we should criminally prosecute any who choose to defy it by keeping their weapons. So we should confiscate this entire class of firearms. What do you think would happen if the federal government tried to do that?
Well, Tucker, did you read the op-ed?
I did. I just quoted from it extensively.
Yeah, I'm not calling for a confiscation. What I'm saying is we should invest in a buyback, that we should restrict any weapons that aren't bought back to gun clubs, hunting clubs, shooting ranges, keep them there where it's safe and not on our streets. And if you were caught, just like if you were caught, with drugs or anything else, if they had probable cause to go into your home and you had one of these weapons, you'd be prosecuted. I've never suggested sending troops out.
I'm going to quote an old friend of mine called Eric Swalwell. He's a congressman from California on the Intel Committee. Can you put it back in the screen, please? I'm just going to quote once again. And we should buy back those weapons, and I'm quoting, criminally prosecute any who refuse to, choose to defy it by keeping their weapons. So you're going to prosecute people who don't give up their weapons. That's gun confiscation.
If they're caught with them, we're not sending troops. We're not sending troops door to door.
So, but what do you think? What do you think would happen? I mean, do you think, because of course the overwhelming majority of those people are law-abiding, have committed no crime, have no plans to commit a crime. You would instantly turn them into felons. Do you think that you would have a civil war? Are you worried about that?
What do you think will happen if we do nothing? You think more kids will be killed?
I'm not.
You think more
arguing
concerts will be shut up? More churches will lose parishioners?
I'm not arguing on behalf of doing nothing. I'm critiquing your very specific suggestion for what we. And you're a lawmaker, so this is meaningful what you said.
And I trust the American people are law-abiding, that their weapons could be bought back or keep them at a gun club. You don't have to give it up.
But what if you want to keep them in your home and you've done nothing wrong? You haven't hurt anybody, and now you just made them into felons.
No, there's no troop roundup here, Tucker.
No, but you just made them into felons. You just said that in the piece. Look, I'm not making this up, but you wrote that. So what do you think? Like, if I'm a gun owner and I have one of the weapons that you say should be banned, and I don't feel like bringing it to a gun club, I feel like keeping it in my bedroom closet.
I don't think you're giving the American people enough credit that they'd be law-abiding and that they would
obey you. Or else they'd be criminally prosecuted.
No, I'm suggesting we have a conversation in Congress and pass a ban like this. They would be obeying the law.
Would you apply, as written by you?
Yeah, it'd have to be passed by.
Would you apply these standards to yourself and your fellow members of Congress?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
not cops though. I don't think cops should be outgunned.
So your bodyguards could have any kind of guns?
I don't have bodyguards,
yes,
Tucker.
Yes, you do. I was there today.
No,
you have many bodyguards.
I don't have bodyguards.
I was just there today.
I don't personally have bodyguards.
Oh, but you're surrounded by them.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by bodyguards that I pay for. And
they're police officers. They're sworn. They're trained.
They're there to protect you. They're
and they
your
shouldn't be outgunned. And that's the problem. I have two brothers who are cops.
Hold on.
My dad was a cop. They're outgunned right now.
But your bodyguards would get to have any kind of gun they want to protect you, but I wouldn't have.
I don't want them to protect me. I want them to protect the people who are getting shot up in the schools.
But that's not. No, Capitol Police exists to protect you.
No, this isn't about Capitol Police.
Well, no, but it is, though.
It's not the kids who are dying, Tucker.
It's about me
in
and
their
my
schools. They're afraid to go to school tomorrow. They hear a book drop.
No, but hold on.
They think a shooter's walking into the classroom.
So you're
Don't they deserve to be protected?
Yeah, they do. And
so
my
let's protect them.
Amen. But
why do you need an AR-15?
I don't know why you need
to protect
one.
your house.
You have them in your building where you work.
Police officers.
No, your bodyguards.
Don't denigrate the cops.
I'm not
Tucker.
denigrating them.
They work
I'm
hard.
glad they're there.
They shouldn't be outgunned, and they're outgunned right now.
But wait a second.
I went to the funeral for 4 police officers who were killed by an assault weapon.
You don't actually care more than I do. We care the same. So it's not a question of who cares.
Do you think cops should have guns?
I think that your bodyguards should have the same guns that I have to protect my family.
They're America's bodyguards, Tucker.
They're not. They're
Don't
yours.
denigrate them like that.
I'm not denigrating them.
They work too
really,
hard.
Can they come to my house and protect my wife while I'm at work?
If you call the police, yeah.
Oh, but can I have a Capitol Hill? When you go to work, they hang out and protect you.
They're protecting the constituents.
Oh, no, they're protecting you, actually.
I don't have
So why not? But hold on. Why shouldn't my wife have the same firearm at home that your bodyguards use to protect you? Is that fair or is that unfair? Why is it unfair?
That's a ridiculous argument.
Oh, why?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Why is it ridiculous? Because you're more important than me?
No, I don't. You are trying to.
No, I'm asking a sincere question. Why should you get to protect yourself?
Our cops should not be outgunned.
No,
period.
I'm talking not our cops. I'm talking
our military shouldn't be outgunned.
No, your cops,
period.
Capitol Hill Police, have. Why don't we just limit them to the same gun I can have at home?
Why can't we have a real conversation about this?
This is a real conversation. Why is it nonsense? You're putting your life above my family.
You're calling cops bodyguards, and that's disrespectful to them.
I'm not calling all cops
Police Week was last week. They were all here in town honoring the fallen, and you're calling them bodyguards.
No, I'm calling your
My
bodyguards.
dad was a cop. He's not a bodyguard.
No.
He protects people. And that's ridiculous.
Do members of Congress have bodyguards? I notice whenever I see...
You're calling a cop a bodyguard? Man, that is so disrespectful.
They are.
No.
And
they're
the
sworn police officers.
pays for them.
They
I was in the Capitol
and your
today.
Kids.
No, they're in your
and
office.
our families.
Can I get the same in my office?
They shouldn't be outgunned.
Taxpayers can pay for it?
They shouldn't be outgunned. They're outgunned today.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If I walk down the hallway in front of your office, you have officers there paid for by taxpayers. Great guys. I'm not attacking them, obviously, and I think they watch this channel.
Attack.
Thank you for that. They're not at all. I'm merely saying that you have better protection than I do. And you're saying that my family doesn't deserve to have a certain species of weapon. You get to decide what we can protect ourselves with, but you're not going to in any way take the ability to protect you away from the Capitol Hill Police.
I'm saying that every police officer in America today is outgunned. For their safety and for the safety of the people they protect, we shouldn't have assault weapons.
Right. You just don't want to apply the rules to yourself. I get it. I wouldn't either. You know what I mean? I care about protecting my family.
Well, let's protect the kids first. That seems like the first place to start.
My house. I agree. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
The left has a new cause defending MS-13. Why are they letting anti-Trump sentiment drive them into the arms of a gang that kills people with machetes? Great question. We'll ask it next. Well, the Democratic Big Ten has grown a little bigger in the last week or two. It already included illegal immigrants. Now it explicitly includes dangerous gang members as well. After the president described MS-13 as animals last week, the left lectured us on how it's wrong to be mean to a group that butchers people with machetes. Here's part of it.
Is it appropriate for a president to ever call anyone an animal, even if they are sadistic gang members?
Yeah, I think that's something to watch out for. The history of political leaders dehumanizing opponents, even criminals, and using animal metaphors is a dangerous one. That is not something that we should accept from an American president.
I do think there's a serious problem with the president dehumanizing any group of people in the United States, even if they are hardened criminals.
It's like so many buffoons on TV. Where do you start? None of these people, by the way, live anywhere near any neighborhood threatened by MS-13, so they can ignore the gang. But a lot of people, particularly poor immigrants, do live near MS-13, and that's a huge problem. Timothy Sini is district attorney in Long Island. It's become an MS-13 stronghold. He knows a lot about the gang, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Sini, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So, do you think that of all the people you could defend in America, MS-13 would be like near the top of the list of groups that you'd want to stick up for?
Look, without getting into name calling, let me be very clear about something. This is one of the most violent gangs that we have in the world. It's a transnational criminal organization whose motto is rape, kill, and control. And on Long Island, I can tell you firsthand, in September of 2016, they brutally killed 2 beautiful young girls. And in April of 2017, they killed 4 young boys in Central Islip, brutally hacking them up with machetes and other instruments. This is a gang that must be taken extremely seriously. And that's why Suffolk County, whether it's the police department, my office, or our federal partners, are all working together to eradicate this gang from our communities.
So tell me if my impression is right, that MS-13 isn't really active in the neighborhoods where, say, I don't know, MSNBC contributors might live. It's really immigrants who were getting the brunt of this.
There's no question that this gang preys upon young Hispanic boys. I'll tell you a quick anecdote. In December of 2017, the Suffolk County Police Department prevented a murder. They received a tip from the community. They did surveillance, and they actually interceded in an attempt by MS-13 gang members to abduct a young Hispanic boy from Brentwood. And that's a hamlet in Suffolk County that is a very diverse hamlet, and it includes a large Salvadorian population. Time in and time again, this gang preys upon young immigrants. We need to do everything in our power to protect everyone in Suffolk County, everyone in this country, including immigrants. And this gang is one of the biggest threats to their safety.
It's unbelievable. And now they're, of course, a big Democratic constituency. Mr. Shea, thanks a lot for coming on and for that perspective. I appreciate it, since you actually know what you're talking about. Well, Hillary Clinton's World Bitterness Tour went to Yale this weekend. She was the commencement speaker. Yale's very impressive. Mark Stein is with us next.
%.
Right now, we're living through a full-fledged crisis in our democracy. Now, there are not shanks in the streets, but what's happening right now goes to the heart of who we are as a nation. And I say this not as a Democrat who lost an election, but as an American afraid of losing a country.
So as a general matter, if you watch the show, you know we don't cover Hillary Clinton because she's sad and we feel sorry for her, for real. But then she showed up at Yale, which, as you know, is one of the most impressive places in the world with some of the smartest kids on the planet. Obviously, we're very impressed by Yale. They invited her to be the commencement speaker, and so we kind of have to cover it. During her totally not bitter at all address, Clinton pulled out a Russian hat, because she's hilarious, and said, quote, "If you can't beat them, join them," because that's not a cliche. Of course, we could never beat author and columnist Mark Stein at analyzing this behavior, so we're outsourcing it to him, so our hands are clean. We're not being mean to Hillary Clinton, who deserves our pity. We're letting Mark Stein explain it for us. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Tucker, I love the way that Hillary is now doing visual comedy. She's disappointed she didn't get to be president. By the way, I like it when you do a visual gag that you explain it, what you're meant to find funny about it, to the audience beforehand. So when she said, "This is a Russian hat," I think obviously she's at a loose end, doesn't know what to do. I think Vladimir Putin should make her chief commissar of state-approved jokes in Moscow. I think she's eminently qualified for it. I personally would have preferred it. By the way, I do actually think this is the actual Russian hat that Russian intelligence agents left the Fusion GPS dossier under for Christopher Steele to find in a men's room on the Kutuzovsky Prospect in Moscow. It's not normally MI6 tradecraft to take the hat, but he thought it might make a nice souvenir for Chelsea. Unfortunately, she'd already been given one by the Uranium One guy, so she gave this Russian hat to her mother, which is very thoughtful. For my own part, I think it would have been a much more effective routine if she'd worn the shubara, which has been worn, as you know, by Macedonian content farmers, the Macedonian content farmers who cost her the election, or perhaps to establish her authority, the traditional kausia, originally worn by Alexander the Great, if I recall my school days, and still favored by Macedonian content farm overseers when they want the masses to cower in terror before them. So I felt she made a poor, like many women at the royal wedding on Saturday, she made a poor headgear choice for this occasion.
See, I knew that you could bring mirth out of one of the saddest, most heartbreaking moments I'd seen in a long time. Do you think, being honest here for a second, being sincere, do you think Yale is aware of how thoroughly it degrades its own already eroding reputation by inviting someone like this to be the commencement speaker?
Well, yeah, I do think as a serious matter that partisan politicians when they're invited to give commencement addresses should not talk about partisan electoral politics.
Yeah,
I mentioned Chelsea a moment ago. For some reason, Chelsea gets paid or she did before November 2016, she got paid seven-figure sums to deliver speeches on diarrhea in Africa. I wouldn't want to hear a speech on diarrhea in Africa for a commencement, but I think that's actually more seemly and appropriate for the occasion.
I agree, and less dirty than what we saw. Mark Stein, a genius, self-evidently. Thank you. Great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
We actually have more Hillary Clinton news tonight. Late-breaking update on the investigation into the FBI's handling of her email. We have details on that. Unexpectedly broke during this hour. We'll have them for you after the break.
I have asthma, one of many pieces